Welcome back to UPress Play, a sports show produced by FAU Student Media. I'm JD, joined alongside me is Cameron, Megan, and Maddox, and we're back for another Wednesday edition of the show. Panel, lovely people, how we doing this week? I know how UP is doing. We print stories. It's time to lock in, but this is like, it's funny. This is like a produced show that we do. We plan for it. We have the cameraman. We got Mitchell, our producer. But this is like our fun thing of the week, which is like funny to say, being it's like this whole like production. We got lights, we got cameras, but
we just get to talk.
We just get to yap. So speaking of yapping, Maddox, tell us, how's your week going?
So far it's going well. Especially from, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that you tweeted on Monday. Wait, no, Monday night. It was Tuesday, right? Yeah, October 1st, Tuesday, saying this was the best month if you're a sports fan. College football continuing, NFL, NBA starts, NHL starts, college basketball later in this month, MLB playoffs. So it's a great time to be a fan right now. I'm getting no schoolwork done this month. I can tell.
I just read a tweet that I think after today there's going to be a college football or NFL game all the way until the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Which is just absolutely insane to fathom, because like, why are we having college football games on a Tuesday? But
I gotta say it's tremendous.
It is tremendous, and who am I to
I would say tremendous.
Who am I to complain about extra football? But Cam, how you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm in my own little personal crunch time with, work and school and, everything happening all at the same time. But a lot of good sports to talk about, as Maddox mentioned. Football, MLB playoffs starting. That's why I wore my Cubs gear, even though they're
not in the playoffs.
Sad franchise, not participating. But
I prefer to be a Cubs fan over a White Sox fan. I mean,
true. They are officially the worst team in baseball history, which was fun to see. But yeah, no, a lot of good sports to talk about. Ready to get into it.
You think it's more impressive to be the worst team in baseball, or more impressive to be the best team in baseball?
I feel like maybe more impressive to be the best team. For the worst team, I mean, I know leagues are very strict on like tanking and like intentionally trying to lose. But I feel like if you're trying to intentionally lose, a lot easier versus trying your best to win.
But I don't think that's what the case was with Chicago. I don't think they were intentionally trying to lose. I just think they were that terrible.
I get what you're saying, because it's like a lot had to go wrong for them. Like bad coach, bad injury luck, and like years and years and years of bad decision making. But I'd have to look at the record, but I definitely think it's harder to win most games.
It's definitely, I feel like, more entertaining to watch the terrible teams.
You think?
Yeah.
Have you watched the White Sox?
No, I will say, because there's been so many clips of like, fly balls and the outfielders running into each other. Like it's a whole Looney Tunes production with the Chicago White Sox. So I will agree with Megan.
They're so bad. They're like, I want to say it was yesterday, like the team put out like a statement, like apologizing to.
Yeah, the team is awesome because they're like the final score for today. The other team scored more runs than us. Like they're like very creative with their social media.
Well, it wasn't like that the entire season. Yeah. Once it started to get like real gloomy for them, that's when they started to like lean into like the funny social media stick, which I think you need.
Yeah.
Teams that bad, you need something to smile about.
But yeah, usually the marketing team just kind of takes over at that point, and it's like, listen, the cat's out of the bag. The team's terrible. We might as well lean into it and promote a little bit of juice that the team may have.
And it's not going to get better because their problems go like deep. Like I don't think we need to get like deep into White Sox talk. But
this is a White Sox podcast.
But like it's like starts with the owner and goes down to like to the left fielder. They got problems, and it's going to be another bad year.
Yeah, because I heard like they're not even going to like qualify to get like the #1 overall pick. Because I think something was like a trade they had past a couple of drafts or something. They now can't get.
A litany of bad decisions got them in their place where they are, and it's going to keep them there for the considerable future. But some FAU housekeeping, maybe?
Yeah. Thank you, Cameron. Let's get into some FAU housekeeping. On Saturday, FAU football defeated Wagner 41-10 for Owl Family Weekend. I guess you could say that the Owls brought the boom.
Oh, we're still doing this. Oh my.
Yeah, AJ and Big Justice came into town, and maybe that inspired the troops to put the beat down on Wagner. 41-10, run game absolutely flourished, and we got to see a little bit of backup quarterback Hasten Wiseman. Also got to see Cam Fancher, and I believe the third quarterback played. But
yeah, at the end, Carson Kruger.
Yep. So we got to see all of that, and now FAU's 2-3 on the season, going into conference play. So guys, thoughts?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
'Cause I have some crow to eat.
You raised your hand. Go ahead.
Last episode I talked about how like it should be a blowout and how there's like no chance at all that they lose this game. But you guys were right. You stuck it to me. At halftime, up only 7 versus an FCS opponent had me. I wasn't physically at the game, but in my living room, yelling, cursing, threw a couple pens. They looked really, really bad through that first half. They started great, they went up 17-0. And then from there, just terrible decision after terrible decision. I think at the end of the first half, it was like 8 penalties for something like 60 yards, 3 turnovers on offense. It's like after they went up 17-0, they completely forgot how to play football. Like they couldn't run the ball as well as they were at the beginning of the game. Like they started off scoring in 2 plays or 3 plays.
Yeah. That first drive was that bomb to I believe Amari Hayes.
Yeah.
And then they ran it in right after.
It was either a 2 or 3 play touchdown drive. They go up 17-0, and then it completely got away from him. We saw Wiseman for the first time, and I think he really struggled in that first half. Some interesting decisions by him, but he's a freshman. And then after the halftime, I think the running game got back to him a little bit. Behind that, Wiseman calmed down a little bit. He was able to look a little bit more comfortable. He wasn't ditching the pocket as much as he was in the first half, I think, which is how you get to 41-10. But still, again, I have to eat crow. You guys kind of had it right on the last podcast. I thought this would be a blowout. But really, there's stuff to build off, I think, especially when you're talking about Wiseman. I think he did he showed what he had to show for his first game. But man, it really doesn't make me feel like any more encouraged that they were in a dogfight through much of this game with an FCS opponent. How are you guys feeling?
I think you brought up some valuable points. The main thing that really stood out to me was, and me and Megan kind of spoke about this, is that we kind of saw this as an opportunity for the offense to kind of find some groove in the passing game. And, when you're dealing with an inferior opponent in FCS and you're dealing with FCS level talent, like, hey, no disrespect to Wagner, but it's the matter of the game. We really thought that this would be an opportunity for them to kind of expand the pass game, see what they had with Wiseman and Fancher, and instead they just decided to rely on the easy part of the offense, which was just running the ball. When we looked against the game against FIU, that's what they did. They dominated on the ground, and I feel like instead of trying to work through those growing pains, they were like you said, they were in a dogfight for that first half of the game, and they were like, all right, let's just go back to what was working, which was the ground game. If you look at the stats, which when you read them off, they were pretty good. CJ Campbell, once again, 14 carries for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zabiri Mobley, 93 yards and a touchdown of his own. This was something that we already kind of came to the conclusion that the run game is going to be there, but I don't know. I think when you have an inferior opponent that you should kind of handle pretty easily, and your offense is at a point where you don't really know what you have, this should have been the game to experiment. And I feel like they just ended up feeling, I don't want to necessarily say what they were feeling, but they ended up just going to what was working, which was the run game. But this is what I mentioned in the last podcast, is that there's really, for me, not going to be too much to take away from this game, simply because it's just a huge talent gap. Right. And I don't necessarily see us having these stats against any of the conference opponents that FAU has slated. So,
well, I don't think we should necessarily hold it against Wiseman or the offense, leaning on the run game, just because this is a redshirt freshman who, prior to last Saturday, hadn't quarterbacked a game in probably 2 years, because unless I'm mistaken, he didn't see the field at Colorado. So his last time in a serious live football situation dated back to high school. So we shouldn't necessarily hold it against him leaning on the run game, because that's what was working for him. But I do see where you're coming from. Against an FCS opponent, you'd like to see them maybe air it out a little bit
more than 12 times.
Take advantage of the talent gap in the secondary. But we should just add the context that this is his first college game.
Yeah, I agree with your point up until they gained back that 17-point lead. At the end of the third quarter, they were up 27-10 again. And why not use that 17-point lead to test out in the fourth quarter his like throwing capabilities, because once you build back a large lead, obviously when they're within 10 or within 7, I understand why they wanted to go to the run game, because they wanted something that would easily get them back into maintaining a pretty large lead. But once they got that back, shouldn't they have started throwing the ball more, just because that has been something that they have struggled in 5 games now. So, and now they're entering AAC play, and the whole passing situation is still a huge question for the offense. So that was concerning to me, but also it was interesting too. In the press conference, the Kaysen, he really had a good energy towards him, and he recognized, and he said it himself. He was like, yeah, I started out rough. I believe the quote I got from him, he said something like, this isn't high school football anymore. I need to focus, and this is college football. So at least, he came back from that and learned, okay, I went in, didn't really do my job correctly, but I'm going to take this as a chance to really work on myself. And I always appreciate seeing that from players, when they can recognize, I didn't do that great of a job, but I'm going to learn from that.
Yeah, for sure. I did read a report saying that Tom Herman doesn't want to have a 2-quarterback system going forward. So with this bye week, I guess the hope is that they kind of see what they have between a case, and they're probably going to go over the film. But to my point, how much film is there to go over when both your quarterbacks only threw 12 passes?
You have a point, not a lot, but I still think, at least in the second half, there's stuff to build off, I think. And I think, like, when you have a quarterback that young in his first game, even against an FCS opponent, going back and looking at every snap, there's something to be learned, because even when he's struggling in the first half a little bit, you can look at some of those snaps and, say, oh, pick things out that, you can work on from every play. Like, one of the things I've talked about is him kind of like escaping from the pocket to a fault almost. Going back and looking at some of these, you can ID maybe like, hey, this specific play, hang in the pocket for a half second longer, and this window is going to open up in coverage. There's definitely, even in a game where he struggled for the first half, and even in a game where you're going in at SCF's opponent, there's definitely things to be learned, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see now that there's no football for this week. I mean, I don't know. Is that a good thing for the fans that there's no football to stress out about for FAU?
Well, I mean, I think this bye week comes at a good time. One, because there's some injuries. We don't really know what their plan is at quarterback, because, gosh, bad journalism here, but Cam Fancher, it's a strain to his hand.
Yeah.
Someone correct me, please.
It's strained, but Herman did say yesterday at the press conference that if they had a game this Saturday, he thinks that Fancher would be
He
good.
would be available.
Yes. So
Okay,
in
so
2 weeks, it sounds like he'll be rejuvenated, because yesterday at practice he was participating, he just wasn't throwing the ball as much. And then Herman said that by today they wanted him to start throwing the ball at practice.
That's not really encouraging, because you need. If that's your, we've already seen.
If he's telling me he would be available Saturday, and an extra week can only help, no?
Well, yes, right. And so, okay, sure, right. So we have the bye week, so that gives time to get Cam time to get healthy. If there was a game this Saturday and the coach is telling me that our starting quarterback isn't even throwing the ball, he's not going to be throwing the ball till Thursday, when we need to start figuring out sooner than later what's going on with the pass game, then yeah. One thing that I do want to, no, go ahead, Cam.
That's kind of my point, that like, when we have this, like, we don't know who's going to be playing quarterback, because we really don't. I think it's better to be choosing between 2 healthy quarterbacks, if that makes sense. So the bye week helps that, and I just think it's been a really up and down 5 weeks for FAU. Like, I feel like they themselves within the locker room probably came away from week 1 feeling pretty good, only to go down to the other end of the spectrum for whatever it was against Army, and then back up after a big win against FIU, and then back down against UConn, and now it's just like been a really, up and down start to their schedule. So I think, having a week to get healthy, but, step back probably like mentally rejuvenate. I think this couldn't come at a better time. Like we talked about, like a get right week for Wagner. I think this bye week is probably like their get right week, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, and I think the same thing as you do, Cameron, but also like going into after their bye week is against going to start conference play, the rest of conference play. And I mean, their first game is against North Texas. Looking at their stats last week against
Very good team.
against I forgot who they played last week, but against that opponent, they had like the quarterback threw 439 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Like that's a very good quarterback to try to go against. So I mean, with this team, you don't know who's going to be the quarterback, who's going to be the starting guy. I mean, look at their stats. I mean, both Cam Fancher had 2 more completions, also on 12 attempts, but only had 150 yards. Kaysen had 7 completions on 12 attempts, 98 yards. However, both threw an interception, none threw a touchdown. It's really not like too much optimism to look at for both sides. So I feel like hopefully with this bye week coming up and what happened last week, the game plan for Herman, which like seems like a one-time only thing, having Kaysen and Cam both share snaps, kind of wakes up Cam Fancher in a way, but like, okay, now I gotta like really set myself in. So if I want to continue proving these guys in the locker room, hey, I am the guy for you. I'm going to take you guys to your 6th bowl game in your program's history. I got to step up at this moment. So I think this would be a very good opportunity for them this bye week to again get rejuvenated, have all the injured guys get back, but also for Herman, his offensive coaching staff, sit together, be like, okay, who will be our top guy going forward, and what we're going to try to do to prepare for once this conference play happens. Because the first 3 games are against North Texas, UTSA, then USF. So those are 3 tough opponents. You're going to start in your own conference play that stretch. So they have to be prepared right now at this moment. I don't think this can come at a better time for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how FAU comes out of that. We'll talk about it next week, but FAU is going to have to punch North Texas in the mouth, especially going into a bye week. That first drive needs to be scripted perfectly for whoever your quarterback's going to be. And yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely coming at a perfect time. Last week, we were talking about where we were on the panic meter because that UConn game really had things looking bleak. I believe I was around a 6 or 7, and I believe we were all kind of on the same thing. And the point that I was making is that the panic meter may not budge if this isn't a really convincing game against Wagner, which for the whole first half it wasn't. So I want to go down the panel and see how we're feeling with FAU football on a panic scale.
I want to say last week I was at 7. I wanted to say. So after this, I say 6.5, I guess, because like I started off, there's really not much to feel good about when you're in like a dogfight kind of with a FCS opponent. But again, I think like not being a total pessimist, the run game looked really good. The defensive line, I don't know how we haven't given the defensive line credit. I think it was 13 tackles for loss, something like that.
It's
like say FCS opponent one. That's a really, really nice looking stat line. That's you can't be more effective against, like you say, it's an FCS opponent, but you really can't be more effective than they were. So there were things to build on. But again, like JD's kind of like grumbling about, it's an FCS opponent, so that's why it's only like I'm only moving it down like a half tick instead of like a full.
Did I grumble?
I wouldn't use that word choice, but that's just that's the
That's what
my bad.
Like I said, you are correct, Cameron. There was a 13 tackles for loss.
13 tackles for loss, which like that's a pretty crazy stat. That's like like walking through the offensive line.
And 2 sacks for a total of 20 yards.
They also only gave up 132 yards in the whole game, and 102 of those came in the second quarter. So that's what within.
And it's not like FCS opponent, sure. It's not like that was a total incapable offense, I think. You were calling the game there?
Nah.
No?
Nah.
He's an FCS quarterback, but like that was a competent quarterback when he was given, 3-4 seconds to throw, I think.
And also just shows
there are things to be gleaned from this.
It also shows like how well, like we already know at the beginning of the season after the first game against Michigan State, which was the offense has a lot of struggles. However, the defense we know can like kind of carry the ship around a little bit. But also now it just depends like how long you can hold it. Because again, we were talking about how with Army game and also with UConn both running the ball heavily, and that like weakened the defensive line quickly because not really much of a not really much of a pass rush defense. So like teams are trying to find their weakness. That's why it's really important for the offense also to step up. But we know for certain defense can hold up the program at a certain level, at a certain amount of time.
Where is yours moving to?
So I think a majority of my basis is going to be on the fact that there's a bye week coming up. So I just think it's kind of like simply kind of when you have like a hot pan and the pan is still hot, but you take it off of the hot stove. So it's kind of just cooling down. There's my analogy for the week. I would say last week I was at a 6. I'll put it at a 5. And then I think when we come back to the show next week, if we get some encouraging reports about, let's say, Cam Fancher's health, if we get a report on who they're going with for the starting quarterback by next week, I'll bring it down to like a 4. Just simply because it's the bye week, so there's really nothing to be in hoopla about. But I mean, there wasn't really too much to be encouraged from the Wagner game. Obviously, when you win by 31, it sounds like it's a lot, but we still have too many questions with the quarterback and the passing offense as a whole. Cameron brings up, the interesting stat with the defense, but we need to see it against some serious competition. And I like the point that you make, Maddox, is that this is an interesting 3-week slate for FAU football. So, this has to be like the bye week, the greatest bye week of all time for FAU football to be a little bit more encouraged. I think somebody just fell onto the roof.
Just heard a loud like boom, and it was like.
Did you say boom?
Oh, please.
Okay,
Please.
wrong word choice. We heard a bang.
Please.
All right, Megan, where's your pen scale on that?
I'm gonna stay solid at just a 7. I know that what you just said, yeah, it's going into bye week, but still, after this bye week, what's gonna happen, And like Maddox pointed out, they're going into a very difficult. Now is entering conference play, which is not going to be easy. At the beginning of the season, it seemed like they had the easiest conference schedule, but just based off how the team has been doing, I don't know if that statement still would hold. So I'm just going to go with a 7 just because of the offensive action that felt like was kind of lacking in this game. Obviously, the run game, they were there, but that also could play a hand in Wagner's defense. They have less strength compared to the teams that they'll be playing going forward. So I'm going to stay solid at 7.
All right, so mine's a little bit higher than some of y'all's. I have a 7.5.
You're going up?
A little bit, just because so far 2 wins on FAU season has been against an FCS team and an FIU team, which is basically an FCS team.
You've lost to an FCS team.
Exactly, yeah. So you got 2 games that are like on that schedule. We all agreed in the very beginning of our show a couple month or 2 ago. We all said, oh, this Wagner game and this FIU game wins for FAU. So those are the only 2 wins, and those are not strong teams. So that already has me concerned. And as I said already, the next game is North Texas, UTSA, and USF. Those are very good programs, even though UTSA is a little bit below 500. North Texas is 4-1. USF, I think, is like 3-2. These are 2 very heavy, 2 very great programs in football, and that's very difficult in that stretch to go forward to. Then after that, later in the season, it's East Carolina, Temple, Charlotte, and then Tulsa. And look at how those teams are playing leading up to their games against FIU. A combination of UConn, Tulane, Memphis, USF, Army, UTSA, all before leading to FIU. So I feel like just how my panic meter is already, I have to move up a notch, even regardless of how about how the outcome was of that game for FAU against Wagner. Because either way, they were up 17-10 in going to halftime and then won by 31. But still, you against an FCS team, you're up 17-0, then gave up 10 straight points leading into the half. Be up by 7. It's not really too optimistic to see. However, going to the first 3 conference games, I don't see really much optimism in there. But the last 4, I feel like the most crucial stretch for FAU.
Good points made there. So yeah, looking at the remaining schedule, we have North Texas at UTSA versus South Florida, which is actually homecoming. Then we're at East Carolina, going at Temple, and then we have against Charlotte for Senior Day, and then we're at Tulsa. So if my math is correct here, we have more away games than we do home games going into conference play. And yeah, North Texas is currently an above 500 team. As of right now, UTSA and South Florida are both under 500, so we may be overplaying the strength of those two teams, but we'll just have to wait and see when FAU plays them. And what just is so interesting to me about FAU football and why I feel like it's always been like this since I've been at the school. I started FAU in fall of 2021. This team could not win another game for the rest of the season, or they could go to the bowl game. I think there's absolutely no in between for this roster, for this whole program. But it'll be interesting to see. Next, on staying on FAU football, we have some news that Megan will present to us. You did the story. You did the story.
But basically what happened, head coach Tom Herman, he confirmed that Jay-Sean Platt is the only player from this season that has redshirted. So, that's great news for the team. Everyone else is still going to be actively on the roster. Basically, the reasoning behind that was that Platt felt like he has more stuff to work on going forward because his first 2 years, he didn't really get that much playing time. And Herman explained that freshmen in specific, like they kind of are there just to watch the team. And he described it as them watching the varsity team, even though they're all on the same roster. But obviously the seniors and juniors, they have more of that real like college experience. And he also said that as of now, Herman was told that Jay-Sean is intending to return to FAU after his redshirt ability or his redshirt year is up. But that's kind of what I was told. What are your guys' thoughts? Are you shocked that there isn't any other players that have confirmed to be redshirting?
No, the surprise more really comes to me that like it's him, because. And I think like the bigger story here is how many receivers FAU is down now, because with Jay-Sean, they were Jay-Sean Platt in the lineup. They were down something like their top 4 receivers via injury, and now with him redshirting, like the top 5 of their 6 or 5 of their top 6 receivers are now not playing. And when you talk about an offense that really needs some juice right now, losing another one is not going to help. So to me, that's my biggest takeaway is yet another weapon. And he's had his moments, even though like the passing offense is like as a whole has kind of struggled through 5 weeks. He had the lone touchdown, unless I'm mistaken, against Michigan State on a really nice route. He's had a couple other really nice catches. So it's gonna hurt losing him. That's my biggest takeaway. I think is another receiver gone.
I think that's definitely a good point. I think my biggest takeaway is, in the report that Megan had, he stated that he does plan on coming back to FAU for the remaining of his eligibility. But I think whenever we see players redshirt, as with the Matt Sluka situation that we spoke about, I believe 2 shows ago, you can only take people's words for face value. And so it's clearly the decision to redshirt, he said, was as a way to continue to work on himself, preserve his eligibility, keep working, maybe put some weight on and keep working on himself to be come back stronger. But I mean, other colleges get wind of this, when players decide to redshirt and preserve eligibility. So, there's so many sayings that I could pull up. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So it'll be interesting to see if Jay-Sean Platt is still with the team next season, and it makes me curious, it was the decision truly, we have to take his word for it, but, was it a matter of the fact that there really is no identity in the passing game and, there's not really a guarantee with the opportunities week in and week out. So it'll be interesting to see, but, best of luck to him because, being a junior already and now preserving using your redshirt eligibility, it'll be interesting to see. And, I think hopefully in a perfect world, he comes back next season and he's bona fide wide receiver 1, with a full off season to work on his game. But yeah, I think you bring up a great point, Cameron, that, a team that Distilled is seeking that wide receiver 1 and, has so many mouths to feed at that position. maybe it ends up working out, and maybe the offense doesn't have to worry about how are we going to get Jay Sean involved in the passing game. But it doesn't seem like there's really anybody involved in the passing game. So it'll be we'll have to wait and see to see how this develops. But there's actually a way more interesting conversation about red shirts as a whole that we can get into. But before we do that, Maddox, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me personally, I feel like with him redshirting, it raises a larger question of who's now going to be that new number one guy. Because again, throughout this entire season, I mean, in the off season, we thought B.J. Alexander been here the longest. He would probably be number one. Then he got like his season-ending injury, so now he's gone. And then a couple of other guys are getting injured, so now it's like only just a limited number of guys in your wide receiver room. And you would typically think, okay, there are going to be a lot more guys and opportunities to get some receiving yard. That's more stuff to their tape. But FAU's offense has not really been that much pass heavy. It's been more run heavy. So I'm wondering now with Jay Sean Platt, with him now injured, is that going to be? It can go either two ways. Either.
No, I don't believe he's injured.
Not interested redshirt. And so they're going two. That can be only going two ways. Either we'll be seeing more receivers now getting opportunities to get some receiving yards for Cam Fancher or Casey Wiseman to throw to, or we'll see the offense being more run heavy. So again, I feel like with this statement he made coming at this time in this bye week, leading up to this huge stretch of these three stretches of games, I think it would be very interesting how the timing he chose for it, which I think was on purpose. But I feel like now again raises a little more of a larger question of who is now going to be either it's going to be a wide receiver one or wide receivers trying to become wide receiver one, or it's going to be Tom Herman and Charlie Fry, the offensive coordinator, are going to try make some plays that are more run heavy and not much pass.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I think running the football. I mean, hey, maybe this is a hot take. I think running the ball at least in college ends up being more interesting than passing the ball. And I just think, I just think where we're at with this FAU offense, like if we could just get any sort of offense, all of our explosive plays have been on one-off catches, like the one we saw this past week with Amari Hayes connecting with Cam Fancher, or it's been like big yard runs. And I think you have to lean on what's going to work, and it's maybe not going to be the most entertaining or the most breathtaking football, but we need to stack some wins. The football team needs to stack some wins, but maybe it is encouraging that other players decided to not redshirt, because usually the option to redshirt is to preserve your eligibility because you're not getting opportunity or because you want to transfer somewhere else. And Herman has said that this is the group that he feels like everyone's really together. Obviously, that was said at the beginning of the season, and obviously things change. And, with the transfer portals, athletes are probably hearing from schools in the middle of the season, which isn't allowed, but it's probably happening. So it'll be interesting to kind of like look ahead, or when time passes, look back, at this moment in time and see how many athletes we have transfer out of the program, because there's going to be a few, but having 20 players transfer is a lot different than only having 5. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe it's interesting to see. Do you think that the fact that there aren't other red shirts, does this kind of show a sign of the buy-in level, or is it just a matter of just like, I don't know, is it a coincidence?
I feel like it might show kind of that they respect Tom Herman as a coach, and that they want to stay with the school and continue to get that experience, because we're all kind of over here saying, oh, it's not a great thing that all these guys are getting playtime, like when they had 8 receivers, I think on, what game was that for? Not Army, for UConn. Right?
It was FIU, I believe, and like 10 players caught at least one.
Yeah, they had 10 players, and then even though they don't have like a wide receiver one yet, but all of these different guys are getting playtime, so maybe that's why they decided to stay and not redshirt, because they're getting that opportunity to actually participate this season. But Herman did raise a larger question when I spoke to him, and that was, is the redshirt ability going to be removed? Because he told me that he said, this is the direct quote, he said, I tried to tell Jay Sean this, but I don't think redshirts are going to exist much longer. We in fact had a vote as head coaches on our proposal to get rid of redshirts, and obviously all of us coaches are in favor of that. So he was basically saying that college football head coaches apparently have been voting. I'm not sure where this voting process is happening, but he's saying that he believes that redshirt ability will be removed. And I guess the plan is to allow players to have 5 seasons of eligibility of play rather than 4. So when he brought that up, I thought that was really interesting. And honestly, I feel like I'm in support of that too, just because, I don't know, the whole redshirt idea, it's a little, especially since they can play 4 games and then make that decision, it's kind of an interesting choice. I feel like maybe if they removed it back to 2 games, but it sounds like it might be completely removed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely an interesting conversation. I'm not sure how much traction that's getting in like the larger scope of the college football world, but I mean, we saw after COVID, all the athletes that, I don't know, I'll just say taking advantage of the COVID year, and then, you can apply for extra eligibility if you get injured on top of the redshirt year.
Look
I
at
believe there's
from Miami.
Yeah, I believe that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's like an 8th-year player on Miami who's a tight end.
And 9 year guy, he's trying. I imagine he's trying to get his doctorate. Because if you're in college for 9 years, you better at least try to be doing something.
Well, yeah, and so that's also the broader the larger conversation at hand is at what point does education play a role? Because sure, you're gonna get that 5th year, but are you gonna have your bachelor's by the end of that 4th year? Are you gonna use that extra 5th year to slow roll your degree? It's an interesting conversation, but I definitely college athletics needs to remain college athletics, and if we have 24, 25-year-olds still playing college ball, then this is what me and Cameron always say: you got to get that CDL, brother.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
Just quote me.
Am I with Cody? But regardless, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that's the decision that ends up being made. I wouldn't be mad at it for 5th year eligibility, because there are a lot of athletes. I especially think about basketball as well, where guys are just like, they know that they're not gonna make it to that next level, or maybe they don't even want to. And especially with NIL, I think a lot of college athletic programs would actually be interested in having their athlete for an extra year. So it's an interesting conversation to have, but I'm not sure how much traction there is on that yet. But going off of FAU football, do we have any more FAU topics? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have FAU basketball. So the conference schedule was recently released, and so now we have pretty much the full schedule for men's basketball slated. And yeah, so I'll go through it real quick. We're starting off January 2nd with a bang, starting off with Memphis at home. That was the last time Memphis met. And that'll be interesting to see. Although, that was a big rivalry game with the old roster, it'll be interesting to see if that rivalry continues. After that, we're going to East Carolina to play them. And then January 8th, which is a Wednesday, FAU will be playing at Charlotte, which will be the Giancarlo Rosado revenge game.
No, that'll be at, when's the other one? February 10th. That'll be that, because that means Charlotte will be at FAU. That's where the fans will be.
Okay, well, that'll be his revenge game, and then that'll be our revenge game. But January 12th, then we're playing at UAB. All of these, also, just to mention, all these games are TBD on the time. After that, we're January 15th at Tulane, January 16th versus Rice, January 26th at North Texas, January 29th versus UTSA, February 2nd versus South Florida, getting that South Florida matchup in Boca Raton. That'll be a fun one for sure.
That's the first time USF has played FAU as a conference opponent in FAU, because they only played 1 game last year, them as in USF.
You go ahead and fact check that, and we'll come back to that. February 8th, we are at Tulsa. February 10th, short gap right there, against Charlotte for the Giancarlo Rosado game. February 16th at Temple. February 20th at Wichita State, which they'll only be playing once this season. Then February 23rd, we're going to Memphis. February 27th, back at home for North Texas. March 2nd, we're going to Tampa for South Florida, then going to UAB. March 6th, and then for the final game of conference play, it'll be at home versus East Carolina. So, guys, what do we think is the premier game in this conference schedule? I'll go first. I'm really looking forward to that South Florida game at home, just because I think the loss last year, although like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how these rivalries transfer over with the transfer portal, practically having a whole new roster. But as far as the fans, I think that last loss against USF left a really bad taste in their mouth. And South Florida, I mean, there's absolutely no love between either of those fans, especially with USF fans and fans of the Athletics always saying that they feel like they're too good for the AAC. FAU being new to the conference, they feel like after the Final Four they were like the big dogs on campus. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential there for this rivalry to continue. But it'll be interesting to see how the season's looking at that point. And that's also my birthday week, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, for me, I'll kind of start with. Actually, I have 2 games I kind of circled
Greedy.
For it. So the first one, of course, I think the elephant in the room, the Memphis game on January 2nd, the home game. Because one's the first AAC game, that's pretty important, like first conference game, but also is against Memphis, that kind of rivalry-ish between them. But also that be from Michigan State last non-conference, and then Memphis, the 2 big known basketball programs you're facing against. The other one, though, is Temple on February 16th. The only game FAU will be playing Temple in conference play this season will be in Philadelphia. And looking back at how the playoffs, the AAC tournament was last year, which really, to me, really showed how competitive this conference was. Temple came from being like from the first round all the way to the championship, and then the semifinals they defeated FAU and came back and defeated them. So that was kind of eye-opening thing, being like this team that was like 15th or 16th like ranked in the conference took out like the top 2 team in that conference. That was very surprising. So I think that'd be interesting revenge game. Sure, not many of the players on that FAU roster are still on that roster from last game. However, I feel like for just some of those guys that were on that roster in that game, that kind of be set in their mind, especially with Todd Abernathy. I think the only coach from the May era, now with the John Jackas era, I think also for him as well, like in his mind, thinking like this is like the revenge game. This is the game that like is really important for FAU.
For sure, yeah. He'll definitely be leading the charge with that game.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the Memphis game, opening up with them just after FAU beat them in March Madness back in 2023. Like, I feel like there's just been a clash between the 2 schools. I mean, we even saw last year when FAU hosted Memphis, the fans were so loud that the coach couldn't hear, like they couldn't make play calls. So I'll be curious to see how that kind of energy flows into this season with such a new roster. There's only 4 guys and 1 assistant coach that still remember that time. And also, I think Maddox just said this too, so I'm basically just copying you. But when Rosado comes back to Boca February 10th versus Charlotte, that should be really interesting too. I feel like with both of these games, I'm just like living for the drama of them, because Memphis, it has that blood because of the win. But then with Charlotte, it's how are fans going to react to him being back in their home court after?
I think
I gotta say, six man is going to welcome Giancarlo. The 6th man is going to be there. They're going to welcome Giancarlo.
You mean like the fans?
Yeah.
I will say, I think when they call him up, and maybe do you think that the media team or like athletics is going to do like a welcome back Giancarlo and like do like a montage?
I doubt it.
You doubt it, but I think. I mean, he was a part of that March Madness run.
I mean, you've seen the what's the clip of Draymond talking to Paul Pierce like?
Oh, you
weren't Kobe. Like, they don't love you like that. He's a really good player, but I think stopping an entire game.
No, not stop. Not
like
in the middle of the game.
like doing like a montage like before the game, like holding on the game. Like, come on.
We got another viral.
No, like show him some love. Like,
you think he's gonna get booed?
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, I really hope not. I hope they're not like booing. I hope they're booing Charlotte. I hope they're not like jeering specifically at Giancarlo.
I can imagine,
because he was a really
important
player in the greatest run FAU has ever seen. So like, give it to Charlotte as a team, but I don't think they should be like personally booing Giancarlo. No, that's kind of silly.
I can imagine being there on the media table and just seeing like Giancarlo like run onto the court, everyone be like boo or like cheering, like
that'd be lame.
All of that.
I'm sorry, like he was really important during the March Madness run.
Yeah,
he was perfect in that first game against Memphis, like literally perfect from the floor. And had like so many really big moments, so that'd be really lame. And I hope
I definitely see it, Maddox, where it's like when they do let's say assume that he's going to be in the starting lineup because obviously the reason to transfer was through opportunity. So let's say he's in the starting lineup. I think when they do like the starting lineup thing, I would hope that the fans cheer, but I think every time he touches the ball, it's probably going to be some boos. But I can respect that. I can respect that for the fans that when they first introduce him, like, all right, let's show love.
Right.
Hometown hero. He's from West Palm, hometown hero back in town. But once the game starts, once that ball tips, and
also he's, I think if I remember correctly, the only one of the team that transferred that went to a divisional rival for men's basketball.
No.
I mean,
Brendan Lorien also transferred to North Texas.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
I mean,
But,
they're in the ACC. How much of a rival is Charlotte?
They're just a conference.
That's what I'm saying. They just play in the
Yeah,
same.
but also
I would call Charlotte a rival.
But also, you just reminded me, JD. Yeah, so Brendan Lorien also went to North Texas, and that Brendan Lorien game for FAU is on February 27th to Thursday.
I think.
Well, bro, you guys are taking all my games. Like,
Okay, say
Go ahead. Get your
well,
games out.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was gonna be South Florida, and then someone said that, so I was like, okay, what would the second one be? And then I was thinking USF. That one got taken. Temple because of the AAC. So now I'm like, what do I even talk about now?
Do you
I think
think
like it's like you can just like throw a dart. Like all these games are so competitive.
UAB,
North Texas, or like I'm saying, like UAB is always a really good game. North Texas, for some reason, is always like such.
last
a close
season that game was crazy.
Like it
That was
took
a
like
game
that was the one where John
He
hit like a crazy 3-pointer to win. Wichita State, those are always really good games for some reason between FAUs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That tournament showed how competitive this conference is.
Right. So like any of these games, I think like last year proved it. Like pick anyone, it'll probably be within like 5, 7, 8 points probably.
Yeah,
So.
I think the only thing that I am like looking at that's kind of lame is that we don't get to play Tulane at home simply because what's homie's name? Cross.
Kevin Cross.
Kevin Cross.
He hooped on us. I'm not gonna
He's
tell
a
him on
hooper.
FAU.
Yeah, I don't know. If anybody's a Tulane fan, shout out Kevin Cross because that guy's a dog.
What is he up to now? I wonder. 'Cause
I
he
bu-
put in work.
Let's figure out where Kevin Cross is. But I believe he's still
still at Tulane. So.
He's still at Tulane, so that kind of sucks. Although both those games I believe against Tulane with FAU were really close. So that sucks that we don't get to play them at home. I think another underrated game
Make a
simply
trip to NOLA.
oh
Greatest city on the planet.
you want to make a trip?
I'm not gonna lie.
We can make a trip to NOLA.
Greatest city on the
We'll hit
planet.
up Bourbon.
Tell me.
Yeah, man.
Where?
All right, we're making the plans, but I think another interesting game too for my NBA draft prospect nerds, UAB at home for Yaxel
Yaxel, yeah.
Lendenberg. He's getting a lot of hype as an NBA draft prospect. I remember for UAB fans and also for I guess the whole marketing team, they were kind of slow playing. Like, is he gonna transfer? Is he gonna go to the NBA? I think he's I don't have the metrics, but he's a forward. Extremely athletic, defensive player of the year potential for the conference. So I'm really interested to see how their season's going to go, being that they were, the reigning AAC conference championships, and for them to retain their best player. They're going to have a lot of hype behind them, and you have to treat the reigning champions as they are the reigning champions, and they're the team with the target on their back. So that's definitely going to be an important game to play. But yeah, Maddox, I'm glad you're preaching it, and you're on your soapbox saying it. AAC basketball is genuinely so flipping good, man. I can't speak about football, but AAC basketball is so flipping good, man. And this conference schedule is pretty interesting too. There's not too many amazing games at home for the non-conference schedule. Obviously, FAU will be able hopefully get their lick back against FGCU. But besides that, and then at FIU, I'll probably make the trip for that game. But yeah, nice conference schedule, and it'll be interesting to see how the Cameron, refresh my quads. What's that called?
Like quad 1, quad 2, quad 3.
Yeah, but the placings. It'll be interesting
I
to
really
see.
couldn't tell you.
It'll be interesting to see how these wins end up helping FAU's chances at an at-large bid
Or hurt them.
or hurt them. Yeah, absolutely.
Pessimism already.
We have no idea what'll happen.
Yeah, not a clue.
But their first game's this month.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We're within a month?
26.
Yeah, I mean, it's an expedition game, but
St. Leo outside
no,
Tampa.
that's the first time that we'll get the chance to see how team comes together.
Yeah. And that is not the only schedule that has been released. Women's basketball has released their full AAC conference schedule, a whole list of new transfers. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up panning out for them. I think it's interesting that pretty much every team does get a chance at the tournament. So last year, FAU did fall short of probably expectations, but with new transfers and, kind of a retooled roster, it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. But getting off of FAU housekeeping, another great segment, I just want to let everybody know watching that if you're a club or if you're a student organization with an event coming up, your general meeting, or if you're just looking for new members, hit us up. We want to promote your club or organization and give it a live read like I'm doing right now in the middle of the show. DM us on Instagram at UPress Sports and we can do a live read for your show. Must be around 3 sentences so that we can edit and fit it in. Hopping off of that and heading into some more college football athletics. Well, actually going back into college football, staying on college athletics. Man, this was a banger weekend, in my opinion. We have Miami versus Virginia Tech. We had Colorado versus UCF. Arguably game of the week with Georgia versus Alabama.
That's game of the year.
Game of the year?
Yeah.
In week 4?
Yeah.
I've got my eye on Ohio State, Oregon in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I gotta say, like week 7 is
gonna be-
there's 5 or 6 both ranked teams playing.
Yeah,
together.
but some absolute bangers, and as Maddox noted in the show sheet, we're pretty much a third of the way through the college football season, which is just so bleak because all that makes me think of is how close we are to graduation, how
It
close.
can't come soon enough, brother. What are you talking about?
Hey man, no comments on that. But yeah, just absolute banger. I want to stay on Miami versus Virginia Tech because that game ended up being way more interesting than I think people were suspecting it to be. And I think my question for everyone is, was that a catch?
It was, unfortunate. Like Miami fraud watch. But I get people are mad how badly the officials botched it, but they eventually got to the right call. I think right. That wasn't a catch.
Wait, you just said it was a catch.
No, it was not a catch. They had the call right. Yes, they botched getting there, but it's how mad can you be that, at least in my opinion, they got the call right? From the rules I'm reading, from my understanding, that was not a catch.
Yeah, no.
So sure, it was bad optics, how horrible the officials looked. It's not a good look. But eventually they got the call right.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't a catch. The rule is that if any man is out of bounds and he puts his hands on the ball is dead. And they didn't come down with possession. It would have been different if the Virginia Tech receiver had the ball, reeled it in, and was to the ground. But that's not what happened. The ball was hovering on his on his chest, and it didn't reel it in. But I think Miami fraud watch ?
I mean, my thoughts about Miami were, people before this game, people were talking about Cam Ward, Heisman, Miami in the playoff, which I get. They looked really good, but they also hadn't played anybody of substance. Florida's terrible. I was at that game. I might have said this on here already. At that game, it literally seemed like Cam Ward had 12 seconds to throw the ball every time he dropped back. And then after that, who'd they play? Ball State.
Then
FAMU,
and then USF.
And USF. These are not real test games. And in their first test, it took a really odd, botched ending to escape. Yes, Cam Ward still looked pretty good, but as a team, that was my biggest worry is when you finally get put to the test, how are you going to look? It happened, and they didn't really look great in my opinion.
Yeah, no, they did get knocked down one spot in the AP college poll.
That's it.
So, I mean, hey, you can't. I don't. You were expecting.
I mean, win's a win.
A win's a win. You got to chalk it up. But yeah, looking at the rest of their schedule, they're playing California. Or is it at Cal? Yep, they're playing at the University of California.
That's game day this week, right?
Is it?
I want to say
10:30 p.m. game day.
I want to say.
That's
Miami Cal's game day this week.
That's nuts. And then where Miami's dealing with their first ranked opponent of the season, playing at the University of Louisville. Then they'll play Florida State, which chalk that up as a win. And then they're playing Duke. And then after that, they have to, visit some demons in the closet playing at Georgia Tech, which was pretty much the game that tore apart their season last year with head coach Mario Cristobal deciding to not take a knee, but we won't hash that back out. And then they're hosting Wake Forest, and they end the season on Syracuse. So yeah, honestly, in regards to the ACC, pretty cupcake schedule for sure.
Very winnable schedule, yeah.
Their biggest test is going to be at Louisville. But if this is the Miami that everyone's saying, is a team that can make the playoffs, they should end up, without a loss on the season. And I don't know, am I allowed to say the U is back?
Oh my God.
Is the U back?
I'm not putting my.
My thing with Miami is that like we've done this before. Like it seems like every year, like the U is back.
U is back. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are the college football.
Oh my God, that's actually
such a great description. Like bars, Maddox. I can't remember what year it was. They played Miami or they played Notre Dame at home. They were wearing black uniforms and absolutely ran the score up on them. It was like something like a 45-point win. And everyone was singing the same song. The U's back, the U's back. And then I think it was like week 10, they lost like a nooner at home to Virginia. And that's just the vibe I get from like this season. I feel like it's the same thing. We're talking early on in the year when they look great. The U's back and they're talking about, this team just gets like the swagger and the culture of like Miami in the 80s. And then I just feel like it almost happened already. I just feel like one of these, like we said, easily winnable games that like we just go and think like, Miami's gonna roll them, and they drop it. And I just feel like that's what Miami's been for like the past 10 years, and that's just like the vibe again I get for them. And I feel like it's gonna be a real one of those like games that he just mentioned where it's like a 28-0. Like they're 28-0 favorites. Like it's the one we're like looking past. Like I don't think it's gonna be like Louisville that gets them or Cal.
Yeah, I feel like just mentioned as Cal.
I feel like a lot of people, because Cal's look pretty good. Like they dropped to Florida State, but they were 3-0 going into that game. I don't think it's gonna be one of these games that we just completely look past and that just Miami lays an egg. Yeah. In my opinion, maybe I'll be wrong because I was wrong again.
Yeah, speaking of being wrong, last week if you remember, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put a little clip together for you. And it's gonna go up on the page. This man, I was trying to say. Hold on. Let me get through my read. Colorado. I mentioned last week that I think they're the most entertaining team in college football right now, and Cameron had a lot to say about that because he, if I vividly remember, and you know what, this is gonna be when I do the Instagram clip. Roll the clip. All right. He said that they might not have a single win left on the schedule. And he was talking, UCF, they should be ranked #1 rushing offense in the country. What'd that scoreboard say? 48-21, Colorado takes it to UCF in Orlando. They came to yo crib and took...
Like I'm a UCF fan.
AJ Khaled did like a crowd surf on Big Noon kickoff in Orlando.
He had that big man crowd surfing on the hometown. Shadur Sanders, 28 for 35 on completions and attempts, 3 touchdowns. Absolutely smoked them. And yeah, they pretty much held the #1 rushing offense in the country. Actually, no, if you look at the stats, it's actually pretty good. But regardless, a win's a win. And yeah, I got to say it. I think people are really downplaying this Colorado team. Obviously, they get a lot of their work done through the transfer portal, so it's obviously hard to tell, what kind of team you're getting. But when you're looking at 4-1 and 2-0 in the conference, a Big 12 that is retooled with all these new schools with conference realignment, I think Colorado has a really good chance to possibly win that conference.
Oh my word!
And you know what?
Oh my word!
That's fine. You call this a fluke game, but I think this is a sign of things to come. But regardless, look, he's like going Big 12 standings. Colorado schedule.
I think we can pick out like.
Give me a team that's winning the Big 12 that is in Colorado.
I mean, I'd say Kansas State has a better chance than they do.
Yeah.
Utah probably has a better chance than they do. BYU has a better chance than they do. Oklahoma State has a better chance than they do.
I'm looking at you just named a bunch of teams that have a worse conference record than them.
How many conference games have been played? Exactly. Thank you. And if we're going to want to go off overall record, why don't we look who Colorado's played? They have not played a killer schedule. It's going to get a lot harder from now that conference.
The only team they played that they won the only team they played in non-conference that they lost to was week 2 against Nebraska in Nebraska.
And they got steamrolled.
Yeah, it was like
Steamrolled 18 point
28 nothing.
Brother, it was like you did not watch that
I did
game.
watch it.
obviously.
It was
It was like
It
28
was pretty
nothing.
bad, and then Nebraska very obviously let their foot off the gas. You really think this team is winning the Big 12?
Listen, I'll take that back. But you know what? Actually, no, Cam, you got me messed up. A book.
I get I was wrong about them last week, but that's bold.
Book it.
That's
Book it.
bold.
They're playing Kansas State, the number 20 team
Give me
in
Kansas
the
State.
country. Nah, it's Colorado at home.
Give me Kansas State.
What's
You
the
have,
Liberty?
like a barrier between yourselves.
I
like,
know,
when you're-
mate.
What is it? Like, it's with Cameron and I.
Civil ball talk, but like, let's be for real. Give me Kansas State next week. Give me Arizona definitely over them. They after last week, I think Cincinnati, maybe they have that one. Kansas or Texas Tech too. But after that, Colorado or give me Utah. Give me Kansas after that, and give me Give me Oklahoma State. I really only see 2 more wins on that schedule, and that's
Yeah,
if.
you know what?
And that's
But what did you
if.
say last week? Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Good point, but
What
again,
happens? What happens if Colorado beats Kansas?
I mean, and if you're right about UCF, if they're really not that great of a team, we shouldn't be like up in Colorado for that.
Well, I never said that UCF was a bad team. I just thought that Colorado was better. And same thing with Kansas State. I love Kansas State's quarterback right now. I'm about to pull his name up.
Avery Johnson.
Avery Johnson. He's an absolute crazy. Shades of Trevor Lawrence, might I say?
Yeah, better flow than Trevor, I think.
Really?
I think
Nah, Trevor had some crazy flow.
he's like Avery
Trevor-
Johnson's like a running quarterback, so like the locks be like flowing behind.
Yeah.
Trevor.
No, he's got like that country flow though.
Trevor's is longer. He's got like back length. Trevor's got like the.
Yeah, but Trevor Lawrence had that like Maybelline flow.
Are we comparing long hair?
We
right
are.
now?
Absolutely.
Long hair quarterbacks right now?
Look it up. Megan, look up Avery Johnson, and you tell me if this.
Nah, I get this is a sports podcast, but like respect where there's respect to do. He's got nice flow.
Yeah.
Not in that picture.
Not a good picture, but no, Avery Johnson is an absolute baller, so that's going to be a test.
Oh, what the heck?
But yeah, he's got some flow. But
He actually does.
I think that once again, and even back to my original point, right? Because my point wasn't about wins and losses; it was about the most entertaining team in college football. And I'll go back on what I said. Because that game wasn't even that
Like, it
entertaining.
depends on what you describe as entertaining, because like by a certain definition, you're right. They got like DJ Khaled on the sidelines, and they had like a literal DJ in their locker room, which I'm like, kind of cool, but also kind of like not a serious program.
Well, and they returned a touchdown fumble.
Did they? I didn't
said
get to
that
watch. I didn't get to watch
backwards.
the game. I only got
You didn't see
to
the
like.
You didn't see the highlight?
No, I only got to watch highlights and
Yeah.
then like breakdowns of the game. I didn't get to watch it live. No.
But also, what happened to UCF? Because they were looking really solid in their first 3 games, and now it's like
Was it like in a downpour too, and like it like
No, the first half of that
'Cause
game,
it
they were up
was-
like
it was in
21-14.
Orlando, correct?
it was.
And that was with the like the whole.
Yeah, no, it was like I know
hurricane,
before the
the
game, it was like a
tropical storm was going
downpour.
through,
It was a
so that's
monsoon.
what-
All this,
Yeah.
all this, you have to just say that it was aura.
Oh my god.
Aura is what.
That word's being thrown around so much these days.
I listen.
So you're totally bought in on Colorado.
I'm booking a win this
Wait,
Saturday.
you want to guarantee?
Really?
Guarantee it?
Well, they don't play. This is 2 years from now.
Oh, they're on a bye week. They're on a bye week. Oh, so we got a whole nother week for me to book this. Hey, I don't bet, but I might hit up Hard Rock bet, and I'm 21.
You're gonna
but
lose some money on that bet,
Like I said, guys, speak to Matt Scola back at the UNLV.
man.
yeah, I don't know what he would have to say about that, but I'm sold on Colorado. Last week we brought up Ole Miss and Ole Lane Kiffin, and our former head coach back to the glory days of FAU, and we were talking about, oh man, number 6 team in the country, can they make the playoffs? I feel like we jinxed them. I think we jinxed them really hard. They lost to Kentucky at home. I believe it was, if somebody helped me with the stat, I think it's Kentucky's highest ranked away win in program history since like the 40s or something like that. Absolutely crazy stat. That game was also absolutely insane. And I feel bad that that whole team kind of had to get jinxed from 4 students that Lane Kiffin never met.
I've met Lane Kiffin before. I've served him at work. Yeah, not gonna lie.
Wow.
What's that like?
It was pretty cool. He was like obviously not in the mood to talk, so I just gave him his drink and kept it pushing. But it was cool to meet him.
Did you remember his order? Did you remember his order where he's mad at you?
He looks like
Well,
he's
no,
like,
he was I was at his seat. I served him, and then for the other 2 hours after that, he was like in like the farthest possible corner of the place you could be, like on his phone with his AirPods in, like not talking to anybody. So like obviously he was like busy, but
Yeah.
got to meet him.
Oh, by the way, JD, so according to the recap on ESPN for that game, Kentucky hadn't beaten such a highly ranked team on the road since 1977 when the Wildcats won at number 4 Penn State.
I don't know where I got the 40s from, but thank you, Maddox, for pulling that. We need you as like our certified fact checker.
Big win.
Sometimes we be yapping.
I think I'm not the copy desk person on this.
It's not as fatal though, this loss, as it might have been like a year ago, because you have 12 teams. There's a situation, or there's a lot of universes out there, you know, where Ole Miss still finds a way to sneak their way into the playoff via one of those, you know, like at large, or I don't know how people are referring to those spots, like non-automatic.
I think they're still calling them at large.
Yeah, whatever you want to refer to it as. There's plenty of universes where Ole Miss wins out, which people might think is crazy. But you know, that's the one game that I look at that
Georgia?
I'm like,
Yeah, going through Ole Miss's schedule, they have to lick their wounds and play at South Carolina. Then after that, they're playing at LSU. See, and that's what's brutal about losing a home game to an inferior opponent, because if the way your schedule is set up, where you have to play 2 away games back to back, that really sucks. So then they're playing at number 13 team in the country, LSU. Then after that, they have their bye week, which they'll be hosting number 19 team in the country, Oklahoma. I think that'll end up being a win. Oklahoma is not what they were, sold to be. Then they'll play at Arkansas November 2nd, and then they'll host the number 5 team in the country, Georgia. And then after that, it's Florida and Mississippi State. So there's at least 3 to 4 wins here. But I mean, anytime you're playing 3 ranked opponents, I mean, that's pretty brutal.
I mean, it's nice to see it. It's nice to see it. There is Georgia. Like, I really think, well, it's probably more likely that they like lose that game. But if you don't mind, that'd be like 6-1 in that stretch, no?
Yeah, but then that would put you in at what, 10-2?
Yeah.
And
I would say whenever you're at 2 losses, there's still plenty of there's still plenty of universes where you can get in with 2 losses. It's just at that point you're like more depending on like other people to like do things wrong. You lose when you have 2 losses, you're like, you don't have control of like your own destiny at all. But with 1 loss in a world where they do win out, which I don't think is the craziest thing in the world. Like Georgia just lost the game. They definitely still have a spot to get in, I think.
Yeah, it'll have to definitely be an at-large spot, because with the current standings, Texas is still undefeated, Alabama is still undefeated, and Tennessee is low-key a sleeper for me this upcoming season. This season with their quarterback. So yeah, it'll be interesting how it pans out. But maybe for the sake of Ole Lane Kiffin, we won't talk about Ole Miss for the rest of the season, because I really did feel like we did them dirty. But getting into the game of the year, according to Maddox, I'll peg it as game of the year just simply because of the way those last like 5 minutes played out.
Yeah.
We got about 5 minutes before we have to have a hard out with the show, but I just gotta say, and he's never gonna see this, excuse the glazing, but Ryan Williams. That guy's a dog. I don't know. I think we have the clip. Mitchell, I don't know. Can you give me a signal if we're running it? Absolutely insane play from a kid who can't even buy a drink. A guy who can't even rent a car.
Should still be in high school right now.
Should still be in high school.
I tweeted that. I was like, when I was 17, I was like taking algebra, and this guy's already on like on Saturday Night Football on ESPN in front of millions, scoring that touchdown.
I saw a tweet of somebody saying, man, I'm looking at my 17-year-old nephew in disgust. And it's 100% facts. When I was 17, I mean, it was COVID during my senior year, so I was just kind of like rolling out of bed and doing my online classes. This guy is playing in Tuscaloosa in front of almost like 50,000, 60,000 fans, hitting literally basketball crossovers on the football field. So absolutely insane play. But yeah, I mean, it was I don't know. Do we feel like that's a good win for Alabama, or is that a bad loss for Georgia?
See, my thought, I'm going to try to be like succinct. my thought is Alabama played as perfect of a half in the first half as they possibly could, and they still only got by the skin of their teeth. I'd say that they'll probably never be able to replicate that first half ever again. And it felt like if you're Georgia in the second half, you figured them out, because I don't really think Alabama got like conservative or anything. It really just felt like more Georgia made adjustments at halftime and figured them out at the second half, and we're right there. So my thought process is if like these two teams were to meet again, Alabama's not going to be able to play as perfect as they did in the first half. So I'd probably lean Georgia. And if I'm Georgia, I'm like, just give me one more shot, because they probably can't do that again.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Georgia, obviously, taking the loss, it's not a great feeling, but they came back from a 28-point deficit, and then they had the lead for a short period of time. So if I was them, like, that's kind of impressive, and Alabama should be a little bit worried that they are allowing teams to just completely come back like that and then end up gaining the win. That it can't leave like the greatest aftertaste.
Yeah, definitely. A good point there. And I think what you mentioned, Cameron, too, is that when you play a second half like that, the second half that Georgia did, it kind of just leaves you feeling of, man, if we would have just played like that in the whole game, maybe not even in the whole game, if you just play a percentage of that second half the way you did in that second half in the first half, you probably walk out of Tuscaloosa with a win. But yeah, probably not really the most encouraging win for Alabama, especially when you're giving up, if my math is correct, 27 points in a half. And it's second half at that. And if you don't have a true freshman, 17-year-old Ryan Williams making an absolutely insane play, they might not even walk out with a win at all. And we might be talking about how Alabama just had the craziest choke job of the season.
Yeah, especially since at the very end of that game, like reviewing the highlights a couple days ago, like Carson Beck threw the ball and it was intercepted by Alabama at the very end of the game. And Georgia was in red zone territory. They were like within the 20, 15-yard line. So if that interception didn't happen, Georgia would have won. As you were saying, JD, we'll be talking about how Alabama had the worst choke job like in college football, like probably in history. So
I don't know about history. There's a lot of history in
college
football, but definitely of the season. But yeah, definitely a good point there. I don't know why Carson Beck threw that ball, but yeah, I think hopefully. I was actually hoping that Georgia was going to score on that drive because I mean it's Georgia and Alabama. I have no dog in the fight. The game was so great.
Wait, dog with an O or AEW?
Both. I wanted overtime, but unfortunately we didn't get it. But that was just an absolutely banger game to watch. I'm like not crazy on Twitter, but like if you ever see me tweet about a game, that's how you know it's an absolutely banger game. I'm also kind of like disappointed, and maybe this is going off topic as we're like getting ready to head out here, but there's currently playoff baseball going on.
Yeah.
So do we have any closing remarks on that, Megan?
Go Tigers. That's my remark.
I believe
I need a team to bandwagon since
I'm not really a baseball fan, but hey, they're in it, so I got to support them.
I believe they were last time I checked, they were playing right now. Tigers are they're playing
the Astros right now.
Oh, actively?
Yeah.
I want to look up the score because if the Tigers win, they will be moving on from the playoffs and they would have beat the cheating Houston Astros. So I can't find a live score of this.
They're winning 3-1. Oh wait, no, that was both post. Wow.
5-2.
Oh, they're winning 5-2.
Top of the ninth.
Top of the ninth.
Okay, I saw them last year lose in person, but I'm happy to see them.
All I gotta say is go Mets, go Mets. Shout out Grandma, love you. Big time Mets fan, and they've been absolutely terrible. So it's good to see New York.
They won yesterday, no?
Yeah.
They won yesterday.
And the first round of baseball is best of 3, so absolutely no room for error. So yeah, Detroit's on top, the Mets are on top. We're not going to talk about the Marlins. With that. That's coming to the end of our show. So, Maddox, kick us off. Where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at MaddoxBlade04 and on Twitter at Maddox Greenberg.
And you can find me on Instagram at Megan_Brunsma and then Twitter, Megan Brunsma.
You can find me on Instagram at jd.delcastillo and on Twitter, jd_Delcastillo.
You can find me on Twitter at CamPriester247.
We'll have another show for you next week, same time, 4 o'clock, live on OwlTV's YouTube. But yeah, that's been it for us, guys.
Peace.